I can't stand single-parent households, especially those with only the mother. They live easy lives off of tax exemptions and welfare benefits, all courtesy of the government. The owner, with his unilateral prejudice, blames us without even understanding the country's system. But I know who you really are. My name is Lisa. A 37-year-old woman who received a jar full of earthworms and pilled bugs from my young daughter for my birthday, with her saying, "It's a gift for Mom." They were all collected from our backyard. I was happy with her love, but how should a mother who dislikes bugs deal with this? Just like me, you like bugs in your childhood, but in the future, I bet you'll faint at the sight of these. Of course, I couldn't voice these thoughts. Parenting is a daily struggle. Such words hit home. It's deeply moving to think that my mother might have felt the same way raising me. I don't have a father. I was told he started a new family elsewhere right after I was born. Thanks to him, I don't even remember what my father looks like. Well, I don't really want to remember such a deadbeat father anyway. Despite our financial struggles, my mother, with the help of my grandparents, managed to raise me and even ensured I got to go to college. During my childhood, my mother was often busy and wasn't able to spend a lot of time with me. But I remember how she always stroked my head while I was sleeping. No matter how much gratitude I expressed to my mother, it's never enough. So, when I received my bonus in the third year of employment, I decided to treat my mom to a fancy French restaurant meal for her birthday. Didn't I do it with my first paycheck, you might ask? Well, to my embarrassment, I was working in a low-paying job and was barely managing to pay my rent for my apartment room. There was no bonus in the first year, and in the second year, I was overwhelmed with training new employees and had barely any time. In the third year, I finally had enough breathing room to spend time with my mother, and I was excited to celebrate her birthday. And so, came my mother's birthday. "I think we should dress up for the occasion," I said to my mother, giving her a fashionable dress, and we headed out for the meal, both of us dressed alike. The restaurant interior was very classic and modern, and my mother said, "Wow, this place is gorgeous," a bit excited. A young waiter across the counter greeted us with a welcoming smile, saying, "Welcome. What can I get you?" His overly energetic response slightly intimidated my mother and me. It felt like we were in a diner. I thought a fancy French restaurant would have a more relaxed atmosphere. We have a reservation under Thompson, for 2 people. I believe we had ordered course meals. All right. Let me check the reservations. Just a moment." With that, the waiter began to check the reservation list where he was making notes. My mother and I exchanged a look. Without saying a word, we both felt a slight unease. Is this place really all right? "All right, Thompson. You ordered the special course. We have reserved a private room for you. Please, take your seats." Okay. We couldn't help but feel anxious from the waiter's words, but we headed towards the private room. The place was a spacious room with city view, which promised a leisurely time without the need to worry about the passing hours. I had a feeling it was indeed a high-end restaurant, judging by the decor. Well, we came all this way, and even if the waiter's manners aren't quite up to par, the meal must be delicious. I decided not to worry too much and enjoy myself. Or so I thought. What? My mother let out a small cry as she just took a seat, which made me instinctively yell, "What happened?" I think I stepped on something down the table." "What?" Taking the place of my startled mother, I peeked under the table. There, believe it or not, was a quite big piece of squid, fallen. Was it a leftover of previous guest? It looked a bit dried out, maybe it had been there for a while. I was taken aback and said, "You. What's this?" not expecting a cleaning lapse at such a high-end restaurant. "Seems like a piece of food fell. It's not a rat or anything, so you don't have to worry." I started to say I don't really want to sit here, but swallowed my words. Was it better to cancel our reservation and go somewhere else since it's a special occasion like a birthday? But my mother was looking forward to eating French food for the first time in a while, and could we even get a reservation at another fancy place at this point? As I was pondering these thoughts for a few seconds, The sliding door swung open, and the waiter from earlier appeared, saying, "Wow, we got a couple of beauties here. How old are you? Got a boyfriend? I'm gonna take your drink orders now." The waiter, all smiles, seemed completely unaware of his inappropriate behavior, prompting our drink orders, and I was left contemplating whether to leave. This was the only chance to flee. Excuse me, but there's a piece of food under the table." I decided to bring up the restaurant's failure first, since there could be a cancellation fee if we cancelled on the day. Even high-end restaurants are run by humans and mistakes are bound to happen. So I brought up the cleaning issue, rather a slightly apologetic one, assuming they wouldn't charge a cancellation fee once they realized their own fault. Or so I thought. "Oh, our dad, well, the owner. It's only the owner and me working here, so these things happen occasionally. But rest assured, our taste is first-rate." The response was a surprising brush-off. And this man, he wasn't just a waiter, he was the owner's son. What kind of upbringing did he have? He didn't speak politely or show any consideration. "Well, I don't think it's about whether you're running this place just two of you or not. Anyway, what's your relationship?" "Huh? We're mother and daughter." "Oh, your father's not with you?" "We're a single-parent family, but I don't think that's relevant right now." Before I could finish my complaint, he interrupted me. "Huh? A single-parent family?" "Yes." He let out a sigh and held his head. "Just wait a moment, Dad." Leaving the sliding door open, he went off to the back where the owner was presumably preparing meals. After a short while, the owner and the son came back to us. "This woman, tempting men and even having a child irresponsibly." The owner pointed at my mother with his chin and said this as soon as he started speaking. The unexpected words left me and my mother bewildered, not knowing what he was talking about. I really can't stand single-parent families, you know. Women playing around with men, getting married on a whim, popping out a kid, and then divorcing at the drop of a hat. And on top of all that, they soak up all sorts of support from the government as the vulnerable. It's just unbelievable. Disgusting parent and child. Sorry about that. My dad here, he hates single-parent families the most." He apologized for his father's words, but his face was full of smirks, showing no signs of sincere apology. "Wait, why do we have to listen to your baseless accusations? What do you know about my mom? She didn't become a single mother or give birth to me out of some frivolous circumstances." In my frustration, I raised my voice. My mother gently tugged at my arm. "Come on, let's go home." Looking back now, I should have taken her advice and left the store without a word. But I was so upset by the harsh words directed at my mother, I blurted out to the owner, "Apologize." The fact that we might lose our deposit seemed insignificant given my fury. I was livid, perhaps even rash. "Shut your trap. This isn't your place to make a scene," he roared, and with all things, he was not targeting me but grasped my mother's collar tightly, attempting to drag her out of the restaurant. In response to my mother's scream, I yelled, "Stop it," and tried to block his path, but was brushed aside. My mother stumbled, the high heels she was excited to wear for the first time in a while slipped off, and the tips of her stockings tore. In her desperate struggle, her neatly arranged hair came undone. "Let go of my mother." My mother too struggled fiercely, her hand accidentally hit his glasses, knocking them off. Startled, the owner released my mother and yelled, "Damn, that was close. What would you have done if you'd hit me in the eye?" My mother was completely terrified, clutching onto me with trembling hands. Seeing her state, her son scoffed, "You're a mess," and took out his phone to snap a picture. Truly an incorrigible father and son. I just hate single parents. Especially single mothers who claim that they are socially vulnerable and need support. That's the worst. It's outrageous that single parents are exempt from making Social Security contributions. If they worked hard, they wouldn't need any help. Single mothers who don't even properly pay their taxes should get out. They're a national disgrace. This man spewed his excessively biased beliefs and outrageous arguments at us, and even attempted to kick my mother. I protected her just in time, but the very thought of him trying to kick an elderly woman with frail bones was horrifying. By the way, my mother never used any of those Social Security contribution exemption benefits that he so despised, available to single-parent households. Back then, she wasn't knowledgeable about administrative matters, barely aware of such things. She never intended to rely on such systems and had just worked relentlessly. It wasn't the first time we've heard sarcastic remarks like single-parent households get a lot of exemptions, right, from those who misunderstand the situation, but this was the first time we faced such harsh abuse. In addition to financial struggles, there's plenty of discrimination and public scrutiny for being a single parent. Unfortunately, there aren't many people who understand that. We were frequently looked at with prejudice and disdain since my childhood, and I thought I had become used to it, but it was truly frustrating to encounter such a situation, especially on a day when I wanted to make my mother happy. Why should we have to listen to such words from people like these? I stared at the face of this man, whose glasses I had knocked off, and suddenly remembered the incident that day. "You're the one who needs to get out." Huh? The man and his son were taken aback by my sudden counterattack. "Why do I have to leave?" the man asked. His son then grinned and said, "Dad, you didn't do anything wrong, did you?" His son was really nonchalant. It seemed like he thought I was bluffing. "Just you wait." I didn't answer his question, but instead took out my phone. "Hello, is this the police? I'm the one who gave a witness statement about a theft the other day." "Yes, that's right. I'm calling because the suspect is at Bon Appetit on 2nd Street. The police said they would immediately head to the scene, and I ended the call. "Theft," the owner of the restaurant paled and yelled, "Don't make up stories." "It's not a made-up story. You broke into a house nearby the other day, didn't you? I thought I recognized your face, and when I thought about it, you must be the burglar from that time." "That's right. Just about 2 weeks ago, when I went to a friend's house, I witnessed a man running away with belongings from a nearby house. I told the police about his features in detail, and they even created a sketch of him. The culprit had broken into the vacant house of a wealthy elderly person and stolen cash from a dresser before fleeing. He hasn't been caught yet. He was wearing glasses in the restaurant, so I didn't recognize him immediately, but I had the feeling that I had seen him somewhere before. When my mother scuffled with him and his glasses came off, and he glanced at us, I was certain he was the burglar." "I don't know anything about it. I didn't do anything like that." The moment the man yelled, a police officer came from the nearby police station and surrounded him in no time. "Let's hear what you have to say," the officer said, ignoring the man who was shouting, "This is nonsense. You take back your statement. I'm not the criminal." "If that's the case, why not go to the police station and prove your innocence? If you haven't done anything wrong, you won't get arrested." "This has nothing to do with that. When the owner started shouting loudly, a police officer stepped in between us, suggesting calmly, "Why don't you come down to the station, just as she suggests?" "Shut up." The owner raised his voice and made a threatening gesture at the officer. "Interfering with an officer in the performance of our duties, huh?" smiled the female officer. Just like that, the guy was restrained by the officers, his arms held firmly at his sides. If he was really innocent, he should have just compiled and gone to the station. Now he's added another charge to his sheet. What an idiot. "You were repeating remarks that look down on single mothers. I just want to make something clear. My mother paid her dues just like everyone else. She was a tough lady, worked in construction operating heavy machinery amongst men when she was young. She fought her way through a male-dominated world to raise me. She deserves respect, not your judgment. At the very least, I don't want to hear it from a lowlife who breaks into people's homes." As I said this with a smile, the guy was livid, but with 2 burly officers standing beside him, there was no chance of causing a ruckus. His son looked baffled throughout, only able to utter, "What's going on?" The owner was then taken to the station and we were questioned. Well, Mom's birthday celebration was ruined, so I made it up to her later by taking her to a nice traditional French restaurant. It seems that the owner used to run the restaurant with his wife. But once their child became an adult, his wife told him, "It's hard being treated like an employee both at home and in the restaurant. I want to live my life freely from now on," and they ended up divorcing. The owner's bitter attitude towards single-parent families, particularly single mothers, seems rooted in a twisted resentment towards his ex-wife. He thought that without a man working, a woman can't even raise a child. "She's been leeching off me and then has the nerve to leave." From what I heard, his wife used to manage the restaurant while carrying their child on her back, and he was the type who'd yell, "Quiet down. Shut that kid up," when their child cried. Probably, she managed to balance both work and parenting on her own, while he didn't help at all. The owner was bossy and arrogant, believed that he did everything and that they were able to live thanks to him. Hearing all this, I thought to myself, no wonder she wanted a divorce. After the divorce, for some reason, the restaurant started losing customers gradually. Perhaps it was due to lack of cleaning or subpar customer service. I remember that when we visited, there were no other customers. To maintain its reputation as a luxury French restaurant, he couldn't just drop the prices, and attracting new customers also didn't work out. The business was steadily going downhill. He should have hired someone, but for some reason, no one stayed for long. The exact reasons aren't known, but it seems that many quit due to his verbal abuse. Most likely, it was a personality issue. Eventually, he had to cut down on staff costs, and reluctantly made his son help out, but as you all know, his son wasn't good at customer service at all. He frequently caused troubles with customers, causing even more to leave. By the time his operating funds began to run dry, he didn't hesitate to resort to stealing. Apparently, he'd burgled once before when he was a student, and got away because there were no witnesses. Having gotten a taste of it, he easily slipped back into thieving, and it was his second offense when I caught him in the act. The fact that I remembered his face was a huge help, and the police were really grateful for it. After that, his restaurant naturally went out of business. He might be out of jail now, but I haven't seen him around here. I've heard he originally borrowed money from some shady sources and even made his son a guarantor without his son's knowledge. Well, I suppose his son, who we also don't see around anymore, is probably not leading a good life either. Meanwhile, I resigned from my job because it was a kind of a dishonest company. Having gained a certain level of career experience, it was a job change for the sake of career advancement. I was in sales at a company that creates web advertisements, and since the COVID pandemic, remote sales have increased. As a result, I'm spending more time with my 5-year-old daughter. Seeing me like this, my mother once remarked, "You really want to be with your child when they're small, don't you?" It made an impression on me. Honestly, as a child seeing my always busy mother, I often thought, maybe mom cares more about work than me. But now I'm glad to know that she wanted to be with me even though it took a long time to realize it. By the way, I met my husband at my new sales job after switching companies. He even used that French restaurant for business entertainment at one point. When I told him about what had happened there, he was surprised, saying, "I stopped using it because there were fewer customers and the service was arrogant, but I didn't know that was going on." It was a somewhat famous restaurant, and I don't know if it's appropriate to call this a shared topic, but our conversation became lively and he invited me to a French restaurant he recommended, which led to us dating. Ironically, that restaurant was like a Cupid for our love. Despite everything that happened, I'm a bit grateful to it. Before getting married, I worried about being judged for not having a father. But my in-laws didn't mind, and my husband values my mother. I'm glad I've been living earnestly and working hard every day. Reflecting on the lesson from that French restaurant, I want to teach my daughter, who will shape the future, to value each person in front of her because you never know what connections life will bring.